for 5 to 10 years.
Okay, I'm going to take a detour right now. 3 alcohol drinks for women increases their chance
of breast cancer.
Wow, didn't know that.
Yeah, a week, not a day.
Right. Wow. And that's common. I should know that.
Yeah. Well, no, you shouldn't know that. I looked up, statistics to give people comparables, right? Because if you just put something out there, people are like, oh my goodness, it's like 5 out of 10,000 increased risk, and it's tripled or 4 or 5 times. So sometimes you look at the relative risk 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then you look at the absolute risk. So it goes from 1 out of 10,000 to 3 out of 10,000, but that is 3 times. That's really only 2 people out of 10,000. And then the 9,998 that would benefit from not having random blood 1 week out of 4. And as the tiger mom from Silicon Valley, this is my pitch to you. Who's going to do better on the SAT? My daughter, who will have 0 chance of bleeding on that important test day, or your daughter who has a 1 in 4 chance? And then to make it clear again, because people do better with stories, I was a pre-med, MIT, biochem final. All of a sudden, bleh, blood. And I'm like, do I run to the bathroom or do I finish this exam, right? And the answer is a pre-med is you finish the exam. But was I a little distracted? Yes. And I looked to my left, I looked to my right, 2 people without uteruses. Not a care in the world. I want my daughter to have not a care in the world and just focus on the exam. And that is not just for the SAT, it's for finals, it's for pitching, it's for going to the media, it's for, any activity that you're doing. I think you're going to do better without random blood. And another example I give is there was an Olympic swimmer. She came out of the pool and she's like, I think I lost a millisecond because period. And I was like, who's your doctor? If I were your doctor, I'd make sure the entire swim team, soccer team, volleyball team, tennis team had all their blood, all their energy, no blood falling out during Olympics.
Okay, so, and I mean, it's compelling. I think I'm imagining that my girls will not find it as disconcerting as I do when I hear it. And it's not relevant for me anymore, so it doesn't matter. But what other physical benefits? Like if a kid has terrible cramps,
yes,
they're good. If they have cysts, is that like
yes? So this is really important. 1 out of 10 people with uteri is at risk of polycystic ovarian syndrome. 1 out of 10 of us will get it in our lives. And so when you build that egg, there's usually 10 eggs that are trying, and then the one that gets the most estrogen pops. But the people with polycystic ovarian syndrome or PCOS, 1 out of 10 of us with uteruses, if you go on the birth control pill, patch, or ring, and you come off of it for an entire week, that week is actually too long. That week was when back in the day, there was 110 micrograms of estrogen. And now there's 30, which is what we recommend as adolescent medicine specialists, a minimum of 30 micrograms of estrogen. Otherwise, if you go below, it's bad for your young person's bones. Once you're above 30, you can go under. And so that amount is too little. And there's actually some escape ovulation on days 5, 6, and 7, because this 7 days off was for 110 micrograms, not for 30, not for 20, and probably not for 10. And so if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, you want something that does not allow the ovary to make this thing or pop out or have any escape ovulation. So at the very least, decrease that placebo week, that withdrawal bleed week, to 4 days, and ideally to 0, because the fewer the times that you are off the medication, the lower the risk of popping out eggs and having cysts. Other conditions that benefit from a stable hormone rather than stable and then drop 1 week or up and down every single month. Asthma, diabetes, seizure disorders, depression, and HIV, as well as, because simply if you're in a third world country and you got blood coming out, that's an infectious risk for other people, not for you to catch HIV, but if you had HIV to give it to other people, or hepatitis B or other issues like that. But everything in general, I think, is better with stable hormones. And my joke is my teenager already has enough drama. If I can stabilize her hormones, and it's good for acne. So any birth control method is better than your standard hormones within yourself for acne if your standard hormones is giving you monthly acne. And so I used to get the once a month acne, and I called it the North Star. It would be here, here, or here, and it would be huge, and everybody would focus on it, or at least I would focus on it. And once I was on the birth control pill, it went away. But know that the research has shown that any of the birth control pills should work because it increases this thing called the sex hormone binding globulin, and that binds testosterone, which I think of as which most people think of as the manly hormone, which causes acne. And so by binding it, it decreases how much testosterone is going around, making your acne. However, if you notice you go on a particular birth control pill and you get more zits, then yes, please tell your doctor. And know, this is my Pandia public service announcement, one of several, that there are 40 different birth control pills. So if one doesn't work for you, note what one it is, what dosage it is, tell your doctor, and they can either turn down the dosage or they can try. There's 8 different progesterones, 7 other progesterones. So don't be like, I tried the pill, it was horrible, blah, 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 blah. Well, did you try all 40 of the pills, or did you at least try 8 different ones?
Wait, so do you have people who actually, you need to test a number of different ones before you find the right one?
That is a great question. So I personally had to go through 3 different pills. And I think only as a pre-med who definitely should not get pregnant during, medical school, residency and whatnot, did I stick with it? Because some people just give up. 45% of people give up on their pill at a year because of different side effects and whatnot. And so I forget that as a woman of color, that medicine is based on the 70-kilo white male, and certainly not for birth control, but Caucasian female. And what works for a Caucasian female, and what I was taught at many of the major academic institutions, does not work for Asians, Blacks, and people who don't want to bleed every single month. And I kept going back to this one because this is the one that we were taught at UCSF and Stanford. And it's great if you're a Caucasian female that wants to bleed every single month. But if you're Black, Asian, or don't want to bleed every month, then I actually, the past 6 years, have been focused on birth control pills only. And I've written 2,000 birth control prescriptions over 2 years, put my MIT Stanford hat, made an Excel spreadsheet, ranked the birth control pills from most going to give you zits to least going to give you zits, most going to stop breakthrough bleeding to least, and optimized it. And at Pandia Health, we have 85% continuation at a year because we know what to put you on so you have the least amount of side effects. You don't even notice. You just go on and you're like, this is great. As opposed to someone over here who like breakthrough bleeding, zits, other stuff like that. And if you do get side effects, then we can tweak it.
Okay, that's great. You brought up a few times about the first 2 years after a girl gets her period. So what's special about those 2 years, and why would you wait until after that to have periods optional?
Thank you so much for bringing that up, because I have a YouTube video on top 5 reasons why your period is late. And I didn't address the particular teen issue that 2 years after you get your first period, on average, your period, your hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis is learning how to do things right. It's getting trained and whatnot. And so for the first 2 years, it can be totally crazy. And so in the YouTube comments over and over and over again, as a 12-year-old, I just started my periods and I haven't gotten it for like 2 or 3 months. And I'm like, it's fine. You can be crazy for the first 2 years after. But after that, please see a doctor. And also, if you just start regular and all of a sudden it goes away for 3 months, see a doctor. So that overrules that you can be crazy for 2 years. But it can be crazy for 2 years. But if it comes regularly and then goes away for 3 months, please see a doctor, because that could be malnutrition, that could be stress, that could be thyroid, that could be a tumor in your head. And that's what I cover in that YouTube, is the 5 things, other than pregnancy, for those people that it's relevant to. But for teenagers, 2 years after your first period, okay to be crazy, as long as it hasn't come every single month and then it went away.
But also, you mentioned when I spoke with you earlier that you would never put someone on the pill and miss the. Okay. So
great point. If you are having horrible periods that you're missing school, the first line treatment is actually ibuprofen, 600 milligrams, 3 times a day with food as soon as your period is coming, or you can even start it the day before. please make sure you take it with food. Otherwise, you'll get an ulcer. But if you fail that, then I'm okay using the birth control. But if you're using birth control just to make #periods optional and you're not missing school or anything like that, but it's a convenience kind of thing, then generally we like to hold off for 2 years after your first period, because for 2 years after your first period, you're continuing to grow in height. And I have short Asian daughters, and I want them to get as tall as they possibly can. And they're not missing school because their periods are so horrible. They're okay. It's more a competitive edge, and it's more decreasing ovarian endometrial cancer later. So wait 2 years if you can after that period to get your maximum height, and then start your #periods option.
So there's research that taking the pill will impede it will shorten your growth cycle.
It can shorten your growth cycle by 1 to 2 inches theoretically. The research is kind of like plus minus. It's more on Turner syndrome women who are XO. Most women are those with uteri are XX. And so they're missing an X. And so they give them estrogen to give them the woman features, but then they end up shorter. And so the question is, how much shorter are you losing? And I think it also varies, right? If you come from a taller family, you had more to grow during those 2 years. If you come from a shorter family, you had less to grow. So my daughters, if I were to start them at 12, would probably lose like an inch, but somebody from a much taller family might lose 2 inches.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I don't even know if you know how many. Is there any evidence of how many women are taking the pill or a birth control in order to not have their period?
The statistic is, I believe, 75% of women using the pill are using it for non-birth control reasons. And it may not be purely non-birth control. It may be in addition, right? That, again, as you mentioned, polycystic ovarian syndrome, the first line treatment is the birth control pill, patch, or ring. And then also for menstrual migraines, if you only get migraines with your period, if we get rid of the menstrual, then you no longer have menstrual migraines. PMDD, PMS, all of these I forgot to mention are also improved. And then women with bleeding disorders, so hemophilia or von Willebrand's factor deficiency, which is the #1 bleeding disorder in young women, and often shows up with their first period, and there's just blood all over the bed, which has happened to many of us as well, but a lot of blood. And so those people, if you bleed every single month, you would lose a lot of blood. The normal blood loss is actually 90 cc's, which is about, I always forget, 15 cc's times 2 times 3. So that's like, six tablespoons of blood that you're losing. But in the toilet and with the rest of your life, it seems like a lot more. And with a bleeding disorder, it's uncontrolled. So those are also women that are taking it because they don't want to bleed out and lose all their blood.
That's great. I actually know somebody. I'm going to share this with them. That's great information. Okay, so do you know which ages are most likely to be doing this #periods optional?
I would say that generally it's probably college age and up, but I'm an adolescent medicine doctor, and I think it's useful for the SAT. So maybe 17 and 18, and just also for parents of teenagers, know that 50 to 60% of high school seniors have had heterosexual relations. And so you want that young person to prevent unplanned pregnancy, right? And so it's good for her skin. It's good for her mental state. It's good to decrease ovarian endometrial cancer. It's also green. We use 10 to 13,000 menstrual products in our lives. And if we can cut that down, but really just the drama of random blood, we've all had that moment where it just hits you and you are not prepared. And you are like, imagine a teenager in the middle of class. This is just not, it's not.
Okay, your number for how many teenagers are having heterosexual sex, it can't be true based on the number of people that I know who say their kids would never be having sex. So who's wrong?
So I'm pretty sure, because if your doctor's, this is another test of if your doctor's up to date and practicing the gold standard for care for teenagers, they should kick you out of the room. starting at age 12. And when you're out of the room, we ask them the HEADS assessment: home, education, activities, abuse, drugs, sex, and suicide. And so we kick the parent out of the room like, I'm my daughter's bestie. I know everything. Well, then I'm not going to find anything you don't know. This is just a safety net to make sure that if you aren't talking about these things at home, that we prevent unplanned pregnancy, suicide, and drug use in your young person. And most parents are like, yes, please, you do the talk. I don't want to do the talk. And so those are the statistics. And you can imagine on a farm when you're bored and you're horny with your hormones, the hormones kick in at 12. 10% of 13-year-olds, freshmen in high school, have had heterosexual relations. 1 out of 10, 3 out of every room of 30. And then it goes to 20% and then 40% and then 50% as the years progress. So if you don't think, here's another rule of thumb. If your young person is with somebody 6 months or greater, they're probably having sex. So if they're with somebody for, 3 months, please have a drawer with condoms, and please go see a physician if they're a person with a uterus and consider a hormonal method. You could consider the copper IUD, but know the 2 side effects is more blood, more pain. Because I have a lot of people that are anti-hormone, and then they go on the copper IUD and they have more blood, more cramps. And I'm like, did nobody tell you? Those are the top 2 side effects of this 7-year method. That's a 10-year method. It's amazing. But you can take it out at any time. But I just am always answering questions on Reddit and Quora about horrible pain from copper IUDs.
Okay, let's talk about your business and how do we tell our daughters and they're like, I want to do that. And you're a way that they can get it distributed. So how does that work?
Yeah. So unfortunately, many pediatricians aren't comfortable writing birth control, even though it's perfectly safe and should be over the counter, according to the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. They've been saying this since like 2006 and have repeated in 2012 and then repeated it again in 2019 that here are 20 questions. If you answer these questions, no, and you have a normal blood pressure, which most people under the age of 35, non-smoker, fit in that category, then it should be over the counter. So if your pediatrician is not comfortable, then you can use Pandia Health to prescribe the birth control. We need parental consent if you're using it for #periods optional. If they're using it to prevent unplanned pregnancies, in some states, they allow young people to consent to that because it is in the interest of everyone that no one gets pregnant that doesn't want to get pregnant, particularly teenagers. So Pandia Health, we're available to prescribe in 14 states, and we can deliver to all 50. So if your pediatrician can write it, or you go to a gynecologist or OB-GYN or family practitioner that's comfortable writing it, then just tell them to send it to Pandia Health, and they go to pandiahealth.com/providers. We'll tell you what pharmacy. We're opening our own pharmacy, but as we ramp up, we're using a partner pharmacy. You just give us the front and back of your insurance card, tell us what address, set it and forget it. We send it to you. Tell your doctor also to write a year's supply at a time. In 20 states, the law allows a year's supply at a time. We haven't been able to get the insurance companies to follow it, but that's the law. Most doctors, and I only learned this because I opened my own company, we write dispense 1, refill times 12. I gave you a year's supply. What's the problem? But I actually chained you to that pharmacy. You have to go every single month. And I didn't think about that. We weren't taught that in medical school. So you can be the one to teach your doctor. You can give a year's supply. And if the insurance doesn't allow it, they can restrict it. The pharmacy can restrict it, but they can't expand it. If you write 1, dispense 12, then I have to go to the pharmacy every single month. So please do me a favor and write a year's supply at a time. And to use our doctors, it's just $20 once a year to use our expert birth control focus, trained on our algorithm, how to bump things up and down if there's side effects, or how to pick the best one, or to make sure we don't hurt your daughter's bone density by going too low on the estrogen. And then you get unlimited follow-ups about birth control, not about anything else, because it's $20. It's a steal. It's a lost leader for us. And then if
and it shows up at your home. Like that's the beautiful thing. Because how many times have you heard a kid say, oh shoot, I'm out of my pill, right?
That
Like,
is the number one cause for women not taking their birth control, is they didn't have it in their hand. And that's why I created this company for myself, so I wouldn't have to suffer pill anxiety, running to the pharmacy every single month and worrying about that in the back of my mind. But the whole point is set it and forget it. No one runs out on our watch. The other two benefits is every package comes with a goodie. So you're like, oh, thank goodness my birth control is here. And here's something nice and happy. And then the other one is it comes with a postcard we call Pandia PSA, public service announcement, and it gives you a tip about the birth control. So did you know if your body mass index is 26 or greater, Plan B and its generics will not work? And 60% of this country has a BMI of 26 or greater. My BMI is 25, and thanks to COVID and some extra desserts that are coming on Mother's Day, it might tip over to 26. And that's why at Pandia Health, we always say, do you want some emergency contraception with that? We do the prescription emergency contraception. And so thanks to the Affordable Care Act, anybody with insurance, any FDA-approved form of birth control is available, aka free. No copay, no deductible. If you are paying a copay or deductible for your birth control or your young person's birth control, then go to coverher.org. It's a nonprofit, National Women's Law Center, and they'll walk you through how to yell at your insurance.
Okay, Dr. Sophia, and this is so much great information. And if people want more information, check you out at
pandiahealth.com, not panda, but PANDIA health.com. Pan is every, Dia is Dave. That helps you remember. And then if you want a refresher on that talk I just briefly gave, pandiahealth.com/periods optional. We're on Facebook, Insta, TikTok, YouTube, and we have tons of great videos on YouTube, tons of great blogs on our website, frequently asked questions. I'm also on Quora, but you can find us where you need to find us. Oh, also the second Tuesday of every month at 5 p.m. Pacific in Espanol and 5:30 in English, we have a Facebook Live where we usually have a topic, but if you have a question, you can throw it in the comments and we'll answer it.
Okay, so you also seem to have a degree in marketing.
Thank you.
Great meeting you. Thanks for sharing your half hour with us and all this great information.
Thank you for having me.